This is a brief overview of the final exam study guide, starting with question number 1. This one is from chapter 9. It reads, discuss how associational life has reflected racial segregation in America and how labor unions and ethnic and national groups have responded differently to racial discrimination. Okay, so this question asks you to look at the historic past of associational life, joining organizations, and how early on in this country, people of color were often excluded from joining things, even things such as labor unions, which should have really been for all workers, not just white workers, and discuss how workers of color responded to their exclusion. Also, in the second piece here, it says to, and so of course, give some detail here. Don't just say, well, yeah, black people were excluded, so therefore they formed their own labor unions. Okay, fine. But what were some of those, and how did that work? Were they as successful as the white unions? Give the detail. Don't just make a quick statement and then be on to the next part of the prompt. Explain the racial disparities in civil participation between whites and non-whites. Okay, so again, look at that historical participation rate. What were those disparities? Why does the research argue that this occurred? And why are people of color less likely to participate in voluntary organizations, associations, and community activities? Again, give the details. Do any of these ideas about associational life help to explain your participation or lack of involvement? Okay, so talk about whether you're involved in any kind of associational organizations. It could be a church group, it could be a soccer league, whatever it is that you might be involved in, maybe a group on campus. Maybe you're not involved in any of these things. What are your reasons for either being a part of those things, or what are your reasons for not being a part of any of these things? And spend some time really thinking about your reasons why. I mean, it's easy simply to say, well, because I have work, or because I have work in school, or I have work in children. That is true. But a lot of people who have children and work and maybe school in the past have worked on social issues. And so that can't be the sole reason. Dig deep and reflect. After learning about associational life, will you be more or less likely to join or participate in these activities? Why or why not? That's the first question. The second question is from chapter 11. And sorry about that little link there. Chapter 11, discuss the differences between color blindness and cosmopolitanism. How would you convince someone that neither is a helpful way of viewing society? So if you recall, color blindness is the idea that everyone is treated the same, color doesn't matter. In fact, a lot of times people will say, well, I don't see color, I'm colorblind, etc. BS. That's what it is. It's BS. We all see color. We're human. The only people who don't see color are people who are blind, and I'm not trying to be glib about that. I mean, that is those are really truly the only people who don't see it. And maybe babies too, because they haven't learned colors yet and the meanings of colors. Cosmopolitanism, pretty much the same as multiculturalism, the idea that everyone is valued for their contributions to society, that there's a recognition that we don't all have the same skills and abilities, but we value everyone for the skills and abilities that they do have and how they contribute to society. This sounds really great. The only thing though, got that mixed up. Take that out. Cosmopolitanism is the same as multiculturalism. The idea that everyone is encouraged to come together, to identify as whoever you may be. We're all encouraged to be comfortable with that, and to be accepting of everyone else's differences, and it's a great time, right? Kumbaya. Unfortunately, though, with cosmopolitanism, there's nothing in that idea that says we should actually take the time to learn about the history and the experiences of others. And if there are injustices that these individuals in these groups or in a particular group are experiencing or have experienced, that we help them to overcome, to fight against those injustices. That isn't in there. Racial democracy is where the idea is, yes, it's great to welcome everyone, be inclusive, but also to identify how those individuals from particular groups might have experienced some injustice, and if they are currently experiencing injustice or injustices, that we rally behind them and we help to work to make the world better for them, the society better for them. We help them fight against those injustices. And so this question is really designed to get you to think about, do you agree with the authors of the text? And I didn't put this there, but you might think, well, I don't see what's the problem with colorblindness. I don't see what the problem is with cosmopolitanism. Then if that's the case, tell me, explain to me your thinking. You don't have to agree with the authors of the text or with me. Just explain how you reach your conclusion. Explain why, from the point of view of the authors, the racial democracy approach is better, and discuss whether you agree or disagree with your opinion. Oh, I guess I did put it there. Sorry, I should really read ahead. Actually put on my reading glasses too. That probably will help. Explain the difference between diversity and equity, and why diversity is less helpful in changing society than equity. Okay, again, if you remember in the chapter, diversity is a nice idea. It's a great idea. We bring a bunch of people together. Great. Well, and then what? Generally, what happens when you do that is people kind of go back into their own little groups. Okay? The equity piece is where you not only bring diverse people to a particular institution or group, but you also recognize that because people are coming from different backgrounds, you might need to provide different resources, different tools for these various individuals in the group or the institution, so that they can be just as, so that they can achieve just as much and as well as everyone else. That is why today, everyone, at least in educational institutions, I don't know about southern states, but many corporate places as well as academic institutions are talking about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, because it's not enough just to bring people to a campus. If you don't make an effort to provide equity, to give everyone what they need to be successful, and to try to be inclusive, to try to bring people to the table, then you just have a bunch of diversity and people are in their pockets within that institution. Finally, discuss one or two things you learned in this course that you would use in your work, school, personal relationships. How will you apply these concepts? Okay, so just one or two things that, and I'm trying to get you to reflect here on something you learned that could be useful in your life. And how will you apply that concept? So here's an example. Maybe I say that I've learned that, I'm the student in this instance, I've learned that interactional change is important. And so maybe what I say is, at work, I'm going to make an effort to talk to some people that I don't generally talk to, because I want to know a little bit more about them. What is their story? Everyone has a narrative, everyone. Whether or not we're interested in hearing it is another thing. So that's how you will apply the concept. Okay. Question 3. discuss some of the legacies for Black families of the destructive practices wrought on them during slavery. Okay, you probably heard the term legacy of slavery. It's because hopefully you have learned that the policies in the United States, from slavery all the way on through to today, have had lasting consequences for Black Americans. And so if we think about redlining during the 20s and the 30s, when banks didn't loan, didn't give home loans to Black people who were trying to buy in a certain area. Or we think about the GI Bill that required certain things that many Black veterans maybe didn't have, or that they didn't even know that they could apply for. All of these things have essentially a snowball effect. So at least include 2 specific examples that are mentioned in the text. Describe how the authors of the text suggest cultural labor, and I cited the page there for you to take a look at, as necessary if a person wants to have a fulfilling interracial relationship. Have or would you be willing to do this work to achieve a healthy relationship with someone of a different race, ethnicity, religion? Why or why not? How would you do it? Here's an example of that. Let's say there's a student who is Chinese American, who finds a partner who is Latinx. And because they're from 2 very different cultures, they would have to do that cultural labor, right? They would have to figure out how to be within each other's lives when they are in their cultural worlds. Because we all are in a cultural world. Yes, even white Americans can have a cultural world. There are many people who are Italian American, Irish American, German American, etc., who identify very strongly with their culture. And so, for example, I'm Latinx. I would not know a whole lot about Italian culture here in the United States, Italian American culture. And so I would have to do that work. That might involve me learning how to cook some Italian dishes, maybe learning how to say some phrases in Italian, maybe learning the history of Italian immigration to the United States, etc. The last part of the question asks you to explain the statement made by Patricia Williams that as an African American of economic or political privilege, you need 2 chairs at the table, one for you, one for your Blackness. Do you agree or disagree with Ms. Williams, and why? Patricia Williams argued that as somebody who sat at the big table, she was a professional, she argued that she was at that meeting, but because of her skin color, because of who she is, she didn't feel that she needed to blend in as much, that she wanted to be seen as the Black person that she is, rather than somebody who is more white than Black. Let me try to explain it again this way. When I was in college, there were a few times when someone in my residence hall would be talking negatively about Latinx people, particularly Mexicans. And I happen to be of Mexican ancestry. And keep in mind, this was in the early 80s, so, times were different then, I hope. I'd speak up and I'd say, wait a minute, I don't appreciate you talking about Mexican Americans that way or Mexicans that way, because I'm Mexican. And this is the response I'd hear. Oh, well, I wasn't talking about you. You're different from the rest of them. I think these people were trying to give me a compliment, but what they were saying is, well, you're not really like a Mexican, you're more like us, you're more white. or at least you act more white, or you talk more white, etc. That's not a compliment. And so for Patricia Williams, as a Black woman in the corporate world, she is talking about how she has to be professional, but she also wants to be her Black self. And so read that passage where she talks about this, and then talk about whether or not you agree with her. That's it for this review. I know that you will all do well if you study all three of these, and remember, all answers must be submitted by Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. because the class ends on Sunday.